This is the FMCG Podcast. This is the show where we talk with the leaders of today and hear their advice on how you can develop your leadership potential. Today, we've got Robin Norton on the show from Grasp Business Development, and he's going to be talking all things insight with us, how insight is developed, where it's going, and how you can apply the trends in insight to your career. Let's get to it. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with Robin Norton today from Grasp, and this is the FMCG Podcast. This is our first show, so don't judge us too harshly. And what the show is all about is basically giving up-and-coming managers in the FMCG industry some pointers with some leaders around core skills and areas of interest that might sort of help your continued professional development, but also giving you insight into what leadership looks like from the inside. So, Robin, give us a bit of an inside view on you, what you're all about, and who are you, basically?
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Richard. So I'm Robin Norton. I run Grasp Business Development. I've been doing that for 15 years, working with loads of different FMCG businesses, all the way up from startups through to major multinationals. And I think the theme of these podcasts is great. You know, I'm a great believer in kind of personal development. At the start of my career, I'd just come out of academia with a master's degree in social research because I'm basically a nosy person. And I learned that I liked to understand what people do and why. And that I was quite numerate and I could work with numbers. And I guess in the food industry in particular, those things are all very useful. We're a very down-to-earth industry, but we're also a very numbers-driven industry. So my first career job, I was lucky to get a career job in my hometown with Nielsen. And in those 3 years, I grabbed as much personal development as I possibly could. And it was a great first employer. I had a great boss there. And I got exposure to a lot of very different businesses, from a startup soya milk company. Right. And bearing in mind, this was over 20 years ago, soya milk was quite an unusual thing, all the way through to Nestle. And I was pretty much presenting at Nestle in York on confectionery once a week. And being very much in that white heat of the sales and the marketing teams and having to deliver valuable insight. I then spent 5 years working for Greencore as a marketing controller, and again, a lot of customer facing contacts. So I did actually present to Tesco at Nielsen, but through Greencore, I got involved with most of the major grocery retailers and a whole load of different product categories, which again was my experience at Nielsen. And then wanting even more change and variety in my career, I went self-employed 15 years ago. And really, again, you know, that's the stage where I become self-taught in a lot of things. You know, when you get out on your own, you've got to be your own IT function. And you've got to answer the questions yourself. So that's been really valuable personal development for 15 years.
Yeah, smashing. Now, thanks for the rundown there. And you, something that we've discussed in the past that is a bit of a specialism for you is you don't just do category insights and sort of customer activation, but you also kind of been doing a lot of work within Vox Pops, haven't you? And qual research and data science, and combining it all together as sort of integrated discipline, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And so that goes all the way back to my time as a student doing a master's degree in social research. We were taught both kinds of research methods. So obviously I joined the labour market at a time when category management was kicking off in the UK. So I feel like I'm one of the most experienced category development professionals around, just in terms of the time I've been in the market, but also the variety of work that I've done. And as you say, we've always tried, the work I've done with my associates, to combine the continuous data that category is known for with the more ad hoc work that insight teams traditionally do. And we try and stick the two together. So if a client comes to me with the brief saying, I think I need focus groups to answer this question, if I think they can answer that question through the data they've already got, I'll tell them. And if I'm looking at data that a client's got and it doesn't answer all the questions, I will say to that client, to answer this, you really need to commission a piece of research, because you're not going to find that out anywhere. So I find it's useful to them to have the experience that I've got and the team around me has got in terms of answering, you know, both the classic category continuous data questions and the fluffy ad hoc market research stuff.
That's really interesting. Yeah, we've seen a bit of a trend recently in a number of our clients, big and small actually, in looking to combine insights professionals and a category skill set together. And definitely it feels like the boundaries between what shopper is, categories and insight has been blurring again recently. I'm sure it's cyclical, but that certainly seems to be a key trend at the moment.
Yeah, and the key thing for me is, and people often ask me, where should category report? Should it be into sales or should it be into marketing? And the real advantage of having insight report into category And having category as an independent function is you get the objectivity.
Mm.
Any manufacturer should automatically score massive brownie points with their customer by having an independent category function. Now, that's not to say that you can't have strong category personalities and sensible businesses that give them the freedom, whether they report into a sales or marketing director, to talk objectively and behave objectively. But I think you only really get that if you cut category loose and it reports into the MD. Category shouldn't be trashing, the reputation of the business that it sits in, but to really score brownie points with customers, if you can sit there objectively and say, my employer has not done a good enough job in this area, we need to do better based on what shoppers are telling us. That's fine. That should be fine.
Yeah.
So I think the two will blur, and the two do really, I feel, sit together very comfortably.
And just give us a quick top line on Grasp. What does your business do?
So as Grasp, I go into generally large clients and do interim work. So I've spent a lot of time in offices over the last 15 years, and that's great for keeping my hand in terms of what's happening in a real life working environment. We all probably feel a little bit like we'd like a little bit more of that back at the moment.
Oh yeah.
Not everyone's got back in the office yet. And the other side of it is the ad hoc stuff, and often I will do that for the very biggest clients as well. But the smallest clients in particular, who can't afford, to be blunt, to have me sat behind a desk working for them for days at a time, the value we add to them is that insight piece. Is often doing quick and dirty insight projects. It doesn't need to be expensive things like focus groups. It can just be some shopper interviews or an online survey that answer them the questions that they need, because some of those clients don't have the benefits of Kantar and Nielsen and IRI data.
Yeah, right. Okay, no, that's really interesting. So just a quick plug for our other podcast as well, for any people listening to this first time that have not come across the other stuff that we do. I mean, first of all, we are recruiters. Sometimes people say, what do you guys actually do? That's how we make our money. We're recruitment consultants, but we love the food industry. The podcasts are our way of giving back. But we also do something called the Snack Challenge. So you can see some brands who've got purely plantain chips, and then Fitch Brew, that's the box for their cold brew cans. And what we like to do on the Snack Challenge podcast is review some of what we think are the most exciting UK food and drink startups out there, and just give you a bit of a window into that sector, because we think the UK's got some of the best startups going in that scene. So if you've not seen that already, go and check it out, guys. It's loads of fun, and some great brands and businesses there that you might not have heard of. But just getting back to our topic today. So one of the things that I wanted to ask Robin, which is something that puzzled me loads in my first 6 months in recruitment, and I would imagine there's probably a number of people out there, maybe you're an account exec or a grad looking to get into FMCG, or maybe you've been working with the insights guys for a while and you still don't understand what they do. That happens too. Robin, just in your own words, what is insights and data science? Like, what is it as a function? What does it do?
So from my experience, I would say the insight team is what used to be always called the market research team in food and drink businesses. And, as the name suggests, their role is about creating the insights, and ideally business driving insights. So things you can action and that ultimately give a business competitive advantage. Now, I'd say insight as a discipline is something that actually everyone in the business is responsible for. You can see things that can make you potentially want to change and pivot your business just on a weekly supermarket shopping trip. I've known businesses that are very good at gathering insights from employees when they go on holiday, looking at things they see in restaurants or in shops on holiday. So insight, I think, is like marketing was, like category is. It's a responsibility of everyone in a business, really. And the process is literally just finding the stories, the ideas that actually can inspire change for the better in a business. And the data science thing that you mentioned is a very interesting kind of idea to stick the two in the same sentence, because data science, to me, I've always considered myself to be a data scientist since people first started talking about it. But I think really to be a pure data scientist, you're into programming language, you're into SQL databases, it's a lot of nitty gritty, techie, geeky stuff. But I think one thing that category does is join both sides of those things together. So I've always believed, when I've been recruiting people, I look for people that are numerate, but I look for people that have some creativity, and the two don't often meet in people. And clearly you can nurture both sides of that, but it's no good being a numbers person if you can't then do something about it. You need to be able to analyze the data and then come up with some solutions to the problem, and sometimes that needs a bit of creativity. And we know it can be done because there are creative accountants out there.
It's true. It's an interesting point you make, because I had a recruitment brief once, and the CAT director that I was working with, he said, look, I need to find people that are data literate, but fundamentally that's just the basics. That's the foundation of the job. He said the guys that are going to do well for me, that are going to help make us money, make the retailers money, it's the guys that know what questions to ask. And that always stuck with me, actually. The creativity seems to be often around finding the right questions, because you find the right questions, you start the right conversation, don't you, about where the insight is and what it can do for people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about being, as I say, being nosy and being interested. If you're interested in what you're doing and the product category you're working in and what shoppers think of what you're selling, you start to ask lots of questions and find out more. One project I did bizarrely was on golfing accessories, and I had no interest or appreciation of golf whatsoever. But having studied some golf clubs and talked to golfers, the penny dropped. I absolutely get it. I know why it takes over some people's lives.
Yeah. Have you been bitten by the bug? Did you buy a golf club afterwards? No, not that's fair enough.
I'm more on the snacking page with you, Richard.
I like that say, if I've got a choice between swinging a club or eating some snacks, I know what I'm going to choose. It's the snacks. So something that I was interested to ask you about is, I think, quite topical to the marketplace that we're in at the moment. It's lean, we're in a recession. And I was chatting with an entrepreneur yesterday who owns a small drinks company, and he was saying, we are developing sales, but it's a new landscape. And we know that if we don't get our strategy absolutely right, we're going to miss opportunities. And his words were, we're going to get the recipe wrong, and we're not going to be growing as quick as we could do. I thought it was a really good way to express your growth as a manufacturer. But in your opinion, what would you say are the opportunities and sort of unique challenges that you get around developing strategy with insight?
Yeah, so I think when you are developing strategy with insight, it's easy to, as you say, get the recipe wrong, to take the wrong turn. And I have seen businesses that go out of their way to try and be different. And I think the challenge is to use insights to be usefully different. So for a start, you can open up conversations with customers by having useful, unique insights for them. So you can tailor what you're doing from the start to make sure, certainly for your biggest customers, your biggest opportunities, you've got a unique story to tell them about, Tesco shoppers, for example, or Sainsbury's shoppers or Asda shoppers. So all that kind of stuff can help, is have those unique insights for their businesses. But more generally, your business, if you're a manufacturer, having a unique perspective on your market, that should be informed by insight, and your insight should be picking up that unique perspective and testing it with shoppers and with consumers. And that again comes back to this objectivity piece. If you are really doing the job properly, and you've got an objective category function, an insight function, you'll be willing to hear the gnarly truths sometimes about what's wrong with your products and with the category, as well as what's right with it. And that's where the growth lies, is in constantly trying to do better. And it's not just doing better within the confines of what you're used to looking at. I'd say also there's a challenge to look wider. So again, the best category people being nosy, you keep an eye on what's happening in substitute products, not just what your direct competitors are doing. And that actually these days could be as much food service as it is retail, and vice versa. So again, your small drinks company, he's probably looking at that recipe and thinking, actually, am I a bit heavy on retail? I'm a bit heavy on food service. Have I got enough activity happening in the recipe in all the middle ground of things that are blurring at the minute?
Yeah, right. That's really interesting. And for those guys watching or listening to this who are sort of interested in growing their insight skill set and adding value to a company's strategy and sort of contributing to that, what's in the insights tool bag? What are the kind of core staples of what you would use as an insights professional to arrive at those questions and those kind of that market data?
Yeah, I think that the conventional way to group things together is to split stuff into qualitative and quantitative insights. And I think it's a useful way to think about things. But in the work we've done over the last 15 years, we've often blurred the two. So if a client's only got time to do an online survey, time or budget for an online survey, we'll put in open-ended questions in there that will get some qualitative response, and we can ask attitudinal questions that get a little bit more of a touchy-feely response from people. And then likewise, if we're doing qualitative research like focus groups, we'll try and generate some numbers. So we'll ask for shows of hands on things like price, or we'll do tastings in the focus groups where we actually get people people to keep quiet and taste products like your snacking podcast, but keeping quiet and scoring things on different attributes. So the two sides of it, qualitative, it is focus groups, Vox Pops, all the stuff we've talked about. Very importantly, it's also in-store observation, so literally watching what people do. So obviously in the current environment, you're going to struggle to go in store and do an online survey or something, or even point a camera at someone, but you could very quietly stand there with a face mask on and watch what people are doing and how they're behaving in a supermarket. And all that is qualitative insights. One of the trendy buzzwords for a few years now has been ethnographic work, or ethnography, where you might actually go into someone's home. You might follow someone around a shopping trip, go into their home, have a look in their cupboards, watch them cook with the family, all that kind of stuff. And that's also very useful. But I'd argue a lot of us, we're doing that day to day anyway in our normal lives, and that's good. On the quantitative side, it's all the data that's available continuously. So, many businesses will be buying into Kantar data and then scanning EPOS data from IRI or Nielsen. But also there's often unlocked value within things like Asda's Retail Link, where there's a fantastic report called What Sells With My Item that starts to generate you almost more qualitative insights, again, anecdotes about what people are buying with your product, and that's there for free in Retail Link, which I think is amazing. We've done a lot of work on all the different panel data sources from loyalty cards. So dunnhumby's the famous one and the pioneer, but the Co-op at the moment are just getting their data into a system called the Hive. So if you've got a Co-op card, there's loads of data to mine from those transactions on the Co-op loyalty cards as well. So that's the two broad themes. I say quant and qual. And most category people are used to working with the quant data, but for me, it's the qual insights that really tend to bring things alive. You can show what the numbers are doing, and then you can bring it alive with an anecdotal example of behaviour you've actually seen in store that starts to fill in the gaps and bring it to life in a human perspective.
So there's someone that's gone on a journey in their career, and they understand the value of insight for strategy, that they now understand what's in the tool bag and what's available for them to draw. And I can imagine at that point, you start to feel a bit lost, like, crikey, I didn't realise there was quite as much here in the landscape that I can use. So how do you get the most out of insights once you know what there is to use?
So I was very fortunate to be trained by Nielsen at the start of my career in something they called the analytic process at the time. I guess a good analyst kind of does things instinctively. You know what to look for. But to summarize that process, once you've been formally trained in it, you hopefully recognize this in the way most people do analysis, is you start at the top and work down. So you're looking for big and important trends in the data. So, if you've got a big category that has a small rate of change, that's an important trend. If you've got a small category that's in double-digit growth or decline, that's also important. These are the things that are shifting under our feet that are worth paying attention to, and that kind of discipline helps you focus on the stuff that matters. And inevitably, you look at data and you try and take those things into account. There are things that blindside you, like global pandemics, for example, that are very difficult to see coming.
That's
but if you're looking for big and important trends, you can't generally go wrong. And then the classic words you'll hear from a lot of category people, and that category people quite rightly are challenged on, is so what. So every insight you can come up with, based on having a petulant child on your shoulder, is actually, well, so what. So I used to continually producing slides for Nestle at the start of my career, and I'd produce a slide and put a headline on it saying what the implication was, and then ask myself, so what, and I'd have to produce another slide and another slide and another slide, and it is almost like a never-ending process. You can be drowning in data, and then the so what principle can actually make you drown in analysis. At some point, you have to accept that you've got as far as you're going to go, and you need to apply the creativity to. So we know what's happening. This is what we need to do about it. To structure the way you look at data would be my advice, and create insight from it. Answer the so what questions, but keep stepping back and asking yourself, do we now know enough? Do we know what we're going to do about this?
So you've got to never stop being nosy. That's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what would you say for those people that are interested in moving into insights, or already insights professionals looking to get better? You alluded to the fact that good insights professionals, good category professionals, they're not just good with the data, they're good with people as well. Like, what do you think are the ingredients in someone that's a really good insights partner internally or externally as an agent?
Sorry, there's stuff coming off the printer. Can you hear that, or is it all right?
Oh no, I can hear it fine. Harry can just cut this bit. Yeah.
So sorry, the question was about people.
Yeah, so I'll just go through that question again.
Sorry, if you can. I don't know how long this thing is, or who's printing. That's it. It's finished.
Oh, is it? I can't hear it fair, so it probably wouldn't appear. I'll just I'll do that question again. So maybe you're an insights professional at the moment, or a category manager listening to this podcast, and you're thinking, right, well, I'm good at the data bit, but I want to get better at the people side that you alluded to. It's not just about asking the questions and being able to use the data. It's also about how you provide a use for that and interact with other people in their businesses. So what do you think are the ingredients of a really good insights partner internally in a business or externally as an agency partner?
From my perspective, a really good insights partner, internally or externally, is fundamentally someone who is objective. So they've got to be willing to speak the truth to power, because it's no good just asking a question of someone regarding insights or category, expecting a positive answer. You've got to be open-minded about what you're going to get back, and this for me is the whole point of, say, launching a new snack product. Is you want to launch that snack product because you believe it's going to add something to the category, it's going to have a category growth story, it's going to do something for the world that no other product is doing. So you're being usefully different, and if you're launching stuff with that perspective, hopefully you've got some conviction it is going to work. But to really succeed, just like you as an individual, if you're launching a product, you've got to be willing to have that constructive feedback to help it hit the mark, to get the recipe as right as you can. And for that you need the objectivity. So that's the key number one thing for me for an insight partner. Beyond that, I think I mentioned it earlier, I think people need to look beyond the immediate brief. So it's never worth going off on tangents and getting completely lost. But if you're looking at one product category in isolation, I would say, things are potentially doomed to failure, because you need to look at, what other categories are actually chasing your spend. Who is trying to steal business from me and why, and how do I deal with that? Because that's all part of responding to trends in the marketplace. So it's being objective about what you're putting into the marketplace, but it's also then casting your eye quite widely across what is actually happening in the market to make sure that the context of what you're launching is right. Just looking at my notes, what else did I write down here? I think that being genuinely interested and nosy is helpful. And I think also someone that's able to talk to all the functions in a business. So, it's all very well to be kind of talking closely with the marketing team or talking closely with the sales team and considering what the customer thinks of everything, as well as the shopper and the consumer. But I think also supply chain, it's the things to be operationally realistic, I think is quite valuable. And someone in a category role, I think, has a real opportunity to do that, because there should be very commercial people, but it's not exclusively a commercial role, I would say. I think category's got a responsibility to work closely with operational teams to keep the business's feet on the ground, in a sense. And I also think for a great insights provider, someone that's got to dig beneath the surface. You'll often hear stories about focus groups where people will say they'll do something in a focus group. Shoppers will say, oh yeah, I will buy that product. But then in reality, they don't. So I think a good insights professional will take an answer at face value, but will also question it a little bit as well. So not necessarily questioning absolutely everything, because no research is perfect, but actually questioning the headline answer you get and looking for nuances underneath it. If someone says they're going to buy it, are they really going to buy it? What are the kind of things that would dissuade them from buying it? Because in reality, we're all very busy. We're all faced with lots of choices over the course of our lives.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's very useful. And just returning to a theme that we sort of touched on at the beginning of our conversation. Insight, it's a discipline for curious people. So it's about people asking questions. It always seems like it's changing. There's always something new that people are discussing, especially in the briefs that we get here at Consumer Hub. Like, where do you see the future of insight going? Are there any kind of key trends that you think people who are, wanting to continue their professional development in this sort of particular function need to be aware of or should be excited about?
Yeah, so obviously there's a short-term thing that's really hit us over the last few months, and that radically changes the short-term view of how we generate insights. So not just in the sense that a lot of people have been working from home, but in the sense that all research is distanced. I don't believe there's a need to stop doing insight as a result of this, because as I say, we've done a lot of work online. We've done online surveys throughout my 15-year career, and we've proved in the last few months we can do online vox pop. So there's a vox pop on, you'll be able to find it on LinkedIn, about the online lockdown and questions over whether new online grocery shoppers will stick with the habit once things lift. So we thought we'd do that as a way of proving it can be done, but also providing some useful content, giving back in much the way as you're doing as a business to the community. The short-term thing, there's definite change in the way we research now, and I think some of those will persist, because actually doing that vox pops work, it worked pretty well. It's maybe not as good as standing at a supermarket shelf and doing it in real life there. But I think it's still a good way of doing things, and a way of avoiding having to get store permissions, for example.
Yeah.
So some of these things will stick with us. In terms of longer trends, clearly there's a trend to more data. We talked about drowning in data earlier. There's a real risk of more and more data coming at us, more and more granularity in it. So the ability to sift through that data and use a variety of platforms and software tools to access it is going to become more and more relevant. So data science skills, potentially some programming skills, particularly in potentially more junior jobs to start off with, and then also use of things like Tableau and visualization tools, I think, are going to become more prevalent. But the breadth of data sources is a real revelation. When I started my career in manufacturing with Greencore, we used to get a quarterly paper-based report from Kantar. And that was it. That was our entire market research input to the business. And I'm now working with clients who've got Kantar data delivered monthly. They've got weekly scanning data. They've got key account data. They've got loyalty card data, so they can look at shopper behaviour on a granular, regular basis. The sheer volume of what's available is huge, and that trend will continue, which is why category and data science have to stay very close together to each other, I believe.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, and it's interesting you touched on the co-op and their hive. Like something that's definitely been a theme in the briefs that I've had in the last few years is the increasing importance of loyalty card data and understanding that, as well as having exposure to Kantar. It seems like a lot of retailers that have had these loyalty cards for a while, they're just starting to wake up to all the sort of opportunities that lie in that data in terms of insight. And it's very interesting to see that develop as well. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is you're a leader in your field. You've hired teams, you've led teams. So I think for a lot of people watching this who are looking to develop as a leader, which most people are in their careers, just wanted to ask you some questions around leadership for you. But just first of all, the food industry, it's got its own personality, it's got its own quirks. Like, what do you think makes a good leader in the food industry, Robin?
I think good leaders for me do three things. First of all, they listen. So my whole business is built on listening, and I must admit I'm not always the best person at listening, but it's my job to listen to shoppers and consumers, and to try and take that into boardrooms. Often have to listen to the teams around me. And I think that's true of all the leaders I've had. Some of the best leaders I've had have listened to what I've said. So listening is absolutely key to everything. And it's listening, to my mind, it's not just to the people around you or going out of your way to gather views through research. It's just listening to everything. It's staying up with current affairs. It's reading the news. Watching what's going on around you. So it's listening in the very broadest sense. It's being a part of society and kind of mainstream society. And in doing that, I feel like good leaders pick up on stuff that other people don't necessarily see. So things like the vegan and the vegetarian movements are things that have bubbled away under the surface that people that have been actively listening have spotted other people it's passed them by. And the same with plastic packaging. It took David Attenborough's show to really raise that, but that was bubbling under the surface for years in the conversations that I'd been listening into. Secondly, aside from listening, it's then actually doing. So I've met a lot of good listeners that don't actually do anything. There's got to be this drive for results from people, and I think the most charismatic leaders I've worked with, they make a difference. And often it's not literally what they do themselves, it's the action they inspire in others. But the point is, we need to be doing something. It's no good, so we talk about category management, it's no good just managing a category. I always prefer to talk about category development. You want to develop a category. Just managing the status quo is not enough anymore. 25 years after it landed in the UK, we need to be developing categories. And then the third one is the biggest picture again. So again, I really espouse this view that if you're a good leader, you're looking not just at what's on the horizon. You want to know what's over the horizon. You want to see stuff coming. The really good leaders through the last few months have been the ones that encouraged their teams to pressure test their businesses, and they'd rehearsed a lot of the actions they've had to put into place over the last few months through their crisis planning procedures. So Tesco had literally war gamed a lot of stuff they've had to do. They could never have got the exact scenarios that have unfolded over the last few months. But the leadership at Tesco really saw the bigger picture and were looking for what was coming over the horizon. And I believe that stood them in good stead. And all the supermarkets have generally proved that their processes on that front are very robust, and they've displayed really strong leadership, I feel, for the whole of the country, up there with what the NHS has done. I think that those for me are the three things of leadership: listening, doing, and seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah. And just on that point, if you're a professional and you're looking to sort of build long-lasting relationships in your career and you want to be a leader, what do you look for when you partnership in developing relationships with people long term?
I think it's I've worked with a lot of different people, and the great leveler is just wanting to do well as a team, wanting to all pull in the same direction and make a difference to the world around you. So help that business to grow, but also make a positive difference in the world around us. And we're seeing a lot of activity around B Corp at the moment, and it does feel like a lot of that ethical dimension is now being baked into this new form of capitalism that we seem to be adopting. It's not all right to just do what you want as an individual or what you want as a company. You've always got to do it, make decisions with the wider implications in mind. So I think that's all really useful to kind of bear in mind. But I think that the very best working relationships I've had have been with people where it goes beyond that, and you actually feel a connection with them. And I wouldn't go as far as saying family, being like a family, because I've got a family.
Come join my cult.
I don't want another one. I just want to go to work with a bunch of people that I get on with. But the best businesses I've worked with, they've got very engaging office environments, and I guess to tempt us back into the office and get us to spend time there, that's going to be key. And they foster a collaborative working atmosphere. And again, hopefully the thread of that has come out in all the stuff we've just talked about category and insight. That I think the best work is done when teams collaborate cross-functionally. And actually, a conversation for me as a category person with a supply chain person is as valuable as a conversation with a salesperson. I need to understand where the product's coming from, not just what the customer thinks about it. So I think that those cross-functional relationships are really key, and businesses that I've enjoyed working with and I think have been really successful have actively fostered those relationships, and made sure that people in the business are all talking to each other.
Yeah. And just thinking about kind of practical points for people's professional development around Insight, are there any professional development resources that you'd recommend people go and check out? And just a bit of a plug for Robin here. Robin's got a YouTube channel as well, so you should check that out. What resources and things that are out there in the ether for free do you think people should just go to as a point of call now to just go and get straight into kind of furthering their Insights career?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as an industry, I think we can moan a little bit about how we are, we all work really hard. And I also feel like the sector isn't always the best payer. And there's a lot of commercial pressure that runs right through food businesses, but we have an amazing amount of resource and support as an industry. And one example of that is the IGD, who I think are just a fantastic resource for any function in a business, but particularly strong for categories. So I got actively involved in the IGD in my first career job, and their Leading Edge initiative, which at the time was just meant for young professionals. And I've since done work with the IGD, going into schools and presenting to school kids to show them how important the food industry is to our society, because people massively underestimate that. And I think the last few months that's come to the fore a bit. So the IGD, I think, is great. There's a lot of resources on there. It's a great networking forum. Thank you for the plug for the YouTube channel. I'd also say social media is a new thing that, again, can be hugely useful to category and insight professionals throughout their careers. So I'm an avid user of LinkedIn. We've got LinkedIn groups called Grasp FMCG and Grasp Out of Home, Grasp OOH, where we share insights on retail and food service channels. So they're really useful, and there's hundreds of people that are members of those. It's a bit like a news feed, but it's tailored to the industry. So I think they're really good. And then there are books. I've got 3 to hand here.
Cool.
To wave a few things around. Things that I think are useful. Freakonomics, you've probably heard of it. It is quite a famous book. If you've not read it, I just think it's great. So it's by Dubner and Levitt. It is a really interesting example of how you can use behavior economics and data and big data and data science to uncover unusual insights and tell stories. And then from that point of view, I just think it's a brilliant piece of work for a category professional to read, and it's quite fun. It's an easy read. This one's less of an easy read. How Brands Grow.
Oh yeah,
so
classic. Yeah.
Been out for a few years now, and there's another one. There's a blue one which I think is probably easier to read, but you're probably better reading this one first. This is dog-eared because this took me months. But that is marketing science. That is really about how marketing activity. We talked about loyalty data. This book says that loyalty, it's a bit of a waste of time chasing loyalty. You want to grow as a business, you chase penetration. And that's key, because if you're doing things right to bring people into your brand, into your category, then you'll automatically get the loyalty of your existing shoppers anyway. So penetrations, that's a key insight from that book. It's quite heavy as material to get there, but it's a great book, and again, really good for category professionals, because it just shows our category is at the heart of growing a business now. Category is about the whole category, the whole market. It's not just about your brand and what you make.
Yeah.
So that's a really great book. And then third one, Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
So again, another easy read, and this perhaps surprising to see me sat waving this as a category professional, because this is actually about how you can make decisions really quickly. Obviously a lot of what I'm advocating is thinking pretty hard about what you do.
Yeah.
I've tried to build a career on that. This book suggests that actually instinct can be really useful, but the example I'd give for that one is you think about things like goo puddings. James Averdyk, who founded Goo Puddings, he did absolutely no research before he launched that brand, but that's what he says. The reality is he did research that brand whilst he was working for Unique Foods, selling chilled desserts to supermarkets. So your research and your insights is not just something you commission or pay. It's what's actually in your head as the category or insight professional. That is the tools, the information experience that can drive successful business development. So reading is great for adding to those tools. One other thing I've been doing during lockdown is using FutureLearn. So I've been acquiring some data science skills through FutureLearn. So all free online courses in things like the R programming language and SQL. So for some people, those things would be useful.
Great. That is so useful. Yeah. Thank you, Robin. That's great. And just to end on, it's a bit gloomy at the moment. There's no two ways about it. Recession, COVID, it's been a bit crap, hasn't it? So, what are you excited about going forwards, looking at the industry?
It's interesting. On one hand, absolutely, I can see how you can look at what's happening and think, oh my God, it is a bit of a poor situation out there in the world. But there's so many positive things happening as well. So, I've learned to embrace change. You've got no choice really in the modern world. And a lot of the changes we feel are going to stick. So the online grocery shopping is just one example of how people's behavior is changing. Online has had a massive injection of growth. And businesses like Ocado, I think, are fascinating and exciting in that regard. And their changing relationship from Waitrose to M&S, for example, there's a lot of seismic shifts around that kind of activity in the marketplace. What Ocado are also doing is investing in vertical farming. So there's this whole technology piece, which is in how we get our shopping, but also how we grow our food as well. Today, I've been reading the National Food Strategy that Henry Dimbleby of Leon has been pulling together with a lot of very influential people from across Britain's food industry, and we need to have a revolution to sweep through farming. And again, some of this is for environmental reasons, some of this is for sovereignty and trade reasons. We don't grow enough of our own food in this country, and that's something that, again, technology and technology development like vertical farming and stuff can help with. So there's going to be whole new supply chains, whole new product categories potentially as well, fresher food around, more local food around, lots of exciting stuff happening from that point of view. We talked loads about data and the emerging waves of data that are now available to us, and I think that leads us on to a kind of a category 2.0. I think category kind of needs to reinvent itself to encompass insight, to encompass data science, and to challenge marketing in terms of marketing science. So, there's the huge amounts of money that businesses spend on TV advertising and trade promotions, the like of which is being challenged by Tesco right now in terms of trade promotions. We need to be better as businesses at managing that kind of spend and using data to scientifically make the right decisions, but doing it with that human angle. The channel blurring side of things, I think, is hugely exciting as well. So obviously food service has been hammered over the last few months. Retail has changed dramatically, but not to necessarily be a positive experience for people anymore. It's been a bit dodgy out there in the supermarkets, and I think we're going to see a kind of a bit more of that blurring happening. Is people are going to feel uncomfortable eating out and shopping still, but the best businesses will be the ones that make that experience as pleasant as possible. So the idea that we can actually be launching products into that space, that there'll be whole new retail concepts evolving out of this, and that food service and retail will continue to blur, I think actually is quite exciting. And it's a way to kind of just keep an eye on what's happening with our high streets, and how our culture of shopping and eating evolves as a country. So I think lots of bad things over the last few months, but lots of exciting different things that are happening now and are going to happen over the next few months and years as well.
Smashing. Right, now that is really interesting. And I think that point about stacking, Adam and I have been reading about that recently, and some of the implications on robotisation and automation as well in the supply chain. I think there's a business called Geek Plus, isn't there, that's kind of revolutionising the back end of supply chain in warehousing at the moment, and it's all these kind of, I think it's like continuous learning robots, and that's something I've learned about this week, and it's so interesting. You think, wow, that's probably like a drop in the ocean at the moment in terms of the changes we're going to see. But look, it's been a fascinating discussion. I'm really keen for people to go and check out your stuff as well, Robin. Where can people find you on LinkedIn and your social feeds on YouTube, etc.?
Absolutely. So we've got a Grasp Business Development channel on YouTube. We've got Grasp FMCG on LinkedIn, Grasp OOH for out of home for food service businesses as well. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. So just look us up, and we're kind of actively posting stuff across those channels. We should be posting in the next week or so a next video on the future of food and drinks. So we're looking at what the changes that have been happening in farming, the technology that's available, because you mentioned robotics and automation is absolutely huge. The potential there is quite dramatic. So there's a lot of stuff on that that's coming out as well in the next week or so.
Cracking. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast today. We're going to put links to all the resources that Robin shared, and also the different links to his social feeds and domains, so you can find out and all about Grasp and plug into their good content. And thank you so much for listening. Join us next time. We'll see you soon. Take care. Thanks for watching, guys. Click the link here for more podcast content on leadership within the FMCG sector, and subscribe. Click the big donut so you never miss an update. See you soon.